Hello guys, this is Sai Madhav. Today we will deal with company audit and CARO. We will be dealing the important points here in a summarized way so that you can cover most of the content in very much less time. Okay, we will try to cover in less than 1 hour. Now starting with company audit. The sections we deal with here are in Companies Act 2013. Okay, first section 139 appointment of auditor. It is divided into two parts. First is first auditor. For the first time you are appointing an auditor, and subsequent auditor for the next times. First auditor in two types of companies. One is government company. Government company definition is dealt in section 2 subsection 45. Okay, that is not less than 51% shares are held with state government, central governments. Both of them are partly by each. Okay, that their definition is contained. So for government company, the appointment is contained in section 139 subsection 7 for the first auditor. First auditor is to be appointed by C&AG. C&AG means Comptroller and Auditor General of India within 60 days from date of registration. That means once the company is registered as per Companies Act, within 60 days, auditor has to be appointed by C&AG. He is the first auditor. Now, if C&AG fails to appoint, then within next 30 days, the board of directors should appoint. If board of directors also fails to appoint the first auditor, then the members will appoint in EGM. This is the appointment of first auditor for government company. This auditor, he will hold the office till the conclusion of the first AGM. Understood? Remember the limits here: 60, 30, 60. First C&AG, next board of directors, next members. Now, for other companies, 139.7 deals with government companies. 139.6 deals with other companies. Other companies means all other companies except government companies. Board of directors within 30 days from date of registration. If they fail to appoint members in 90 days at EGM. Okay, 30-90, simple. Remember, only if it is government company, C&AG comes into picture. If it is a non-government company, no C&AG, only board and members. Here also he will hold the office till the conclusion of first AGM. The word conclusion is very important. Okay, that means the AGM has to be held and it is to be concluded. Then only he will resign from his office. Till then he will hold the office. This is regarding the first auditor, section 139.6 and section 139.7. Now going to subsequent auditor. Subsequent auditor means once the first auditor is completed, the other auditors known as subsequent auditors. Same here for government company, section 139 subsection 5. Appointed by C&AG within 180 days from the commencement of year. Commencement of financial year starts from April 1st. Within 180 days from April 1st, subsequent auditor has to be appointed by C&AG. Right? Now, he will hold the office till the conclusion of AGM. Right? This is 139 subsection 5. Now 139 subsection 1. This is for other companies. Subsequent auditor appointed by members in AGM. He will hold the office from first AGM to 6th AGM. That means for 5 AGMs he will hold the office. While appointing him, written consent has to be obtained from the appointing auditor and certificate that section 141 is fulfilled. We will deal with 141 so that you can understand. You should also submit to ROC, that is Register of Companies, in form ADT1 in 15 days. We will deal with this here. Okay, in the next slide I will show you. 139 subsection 1, appointment of subsequent auditors. The company is registered here. In 30 days, first auditor by board of directors. In the first AGM, this auditor will resign. He will vacate the office. Other auditor will be appointed. He is known as subsequent auditor at this AGM. From this AGM, you count 5 AGMs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At the 6th AGM, he should vacate the office. Okay, for 5 AGMs, he can hold the office. However, in every AGM, his appointment should be ratified. Okay, if not ratified, it will be deemed as casual vacancy under section 139(8). Understood? No. At first AGM, he is appointed, right? Within 15 days, intimation has to be given in form ADT1 to both auditor and ROC. Written consent has to be taken, satisfying section 141, qualification, disqualification, notice of appointment 15 days to ROC in ADT1. Okay, I hope you are clear with this. Section 139 subsection 5, government company, subsequent auditor, 180 days till the conclusion of AGM. Okay, now section 139 subsection 8, casual vacancy. See, casual vacancy, the word is not defined in Companies Act. In general terms, casual vacancy means it can arise from the death, if auditor is dead, okay, or he resigned, or he attracted any disqualifications, then he should vacate from the office. That vacation is called as casual vacancy. Now, to fill this casual vacancy, you have to appoint another auditor. 139(8) deals with appointment of auditor in casual vacancy. For other companies, board of directors will appoint in 30 days. If this casual vacancy is caused by resignation of auditor, then approval in general meeting should be obtained within 3 months. Okay, because resignation means something serious is going on. It may be of any reason. So, if the auditor resigned, which resulted in casual vacancy, the board of directors will appoint auditor in 30 days. However, approval should be taken from the members in general meeting within 3 months from the date of appointment. Okay, this is for other companies. For government companies, casual vacancy to be filled by C and AG in 30 days. That's it. Here he will hold the office till the conclusion of next AGM. Only till next AGM, this casual vacancy auditor, he will hold the office. In the next AGM, separate auditor will be appointed. As usual, members will appoint the auditor. Now, rotation of auditors. This is very important. See, we know as per SA 200, auditor should be independent. But if the auditor is same every year for the client, so he will develop some rapport with the client. Okay, there is a huge chance for the independence getting affected. So in the Companies Act 2013, rotation has been introduced. What is rotation? Auditor can be of two types: individual or a firm. Firm can also be appointed as auditor. Firm including LLP, limited liability partnership. If individual is appointed as an auditor, he can be appointed for one term of 5 years. If a firm is appointed as an auditor, two terms of 5 years. That is total 10 years, but two terms. Why two terms is mentioned here? Because after 5 years, he should be reappointed as an auditor. For one time, 10 years, he cannot be appointed. For one time, only 5 years. After 5 years, he should be reappointed. But individual, after one term of 5 years, he cannot be reappointed. Now, this is not applicable for all the companies. This is applicable to only companies given here. Listed companies, unlisted public companies, where paid up capital is greater than 10 crores. And private companies where paid up capital is greater than 50 crores. Any other company having borrowings greater than 50 crores, greater than or equal to. For only these companies, the rotation will be applicable. For other companies, there is no applicability of rotation. What happens after this 5 years or these two terms of 5 years? There should be compulsory cooling off period of minimum 5 years. For example, if an auditor is appointed in 2010, That auditor is an individual auditor. For 5 years, he can hold the office. That is, up to 2015, he can hold the office. From 2015, there should be a cooling off period of 5 years till 2020. In 2020, he can be appointed as an auditor. No bar in appointment for holding subsidiary or associate in cooling off period. See, suppose take an example of individual. He has hold the office for 5 years. In the next 5 years, cooling off period, he cannot be appointed as auditor for the same company. However, he can be appointed for holding subsidiary or associate, because this is not mentioned in the law. Okay, this question can be asked in the exam. 139, 9 and 10. Reappointment of retiring auditor. Retiring auditor, that means he is retiring now. Can he be appointed again? Yes, that is known as reappointment. He can be reappointed if he is not disqualified for reappointment. He should not be disqualified. How can an auditor be disqualified? We will deal later. Okay. He has not given the company a notice in writing of unwillingness. If he has given that I am not willing to take the part of an auditor, then we cannot appoint him an auditor. So he should not give the writing. A special resolution has been passed appointing some other auditor, or expressly stating that he shall not be reappointed. If these things are available, he can be reappointed. Right? That is 139, 9 and 10. Reappointing of retiring auditor. 140. Removal and resignation of auditor. 140 subsection 1 deals with removal. Removal can only be done by special resolution, central government approval, and opportunity of being heard should be given to the auditor. Because removal is a very serious thing. Okay, if you are able to remove auditors again and again, there is no use, right? Because auditor is a very respected position, and he should be having so much of independence and objectivity. If you try to remove him again and again, it is not possible. Okay, that's why central government approval is needed for removal. What is the process to remove an auditor? First, you should pass a board resolution to remove the auditor. Within 30 days of board resolution, obtain central government approval. After obtaining central government approval, within 60 days, in general meeting, a special resolution to be passed for removal of auditor. However, that auditor should be given opportunity of being heard. Then finally you can remove the auditor. Okay. This is section 140 subsection 1. 140 subsection 4. Appointing an auditor other than retiring auditor. We dealt with how to appoint a retiring auditor. Now you are appointing some person other than retiring auditor. Can you appoint? Yes, you can appoint. Special notice required. See, special resolution is different, special notice is different. I hope you are aware of that. Special notice required unless for rotation. Okay. Copy to retiring auditor. A copy should be given to retiring auditor that a new auditor is being appointed in your place. Right of retiring auditor to make representation. The retiring auditor, the old auditor, should be given opportunity of being heard. That means he can make his representation in the general meeting. If he can come, he can make a representation, or he can provide some writing. In writing, he can provide some things that things can be read in such general meeting. This is section 140 subsection 4. Next, 140 subsection 5. Tribunal's power to change its auditor. Tribunal is nothing but a court. Okay, court can change its auditors. That auditor shall not be eligible for 5 years from passing the order. If the auditor is passed for removal of auditor, for the next 5 years, the same auditor cannot be appointed. Now section 140 subsection 2, resignation of auditor. Can auditor resign? Yes, of course he can resign. He should intimate in form ADT3 within 30 days of resignation to company ROC. If it is a government company, he should inform to C&AG. See, C&AG is the boss for government company. Whatever happens in the government company, C&AG comes into picture. Whether it is appointment of first auditor, subsequent auditor, resignation, whatever happens, C&AG will be there in the picture for a government company. If he defaults in doing this, then there will be a penalty of minimum 50,000 or remuneration of the auditor, whichever is less, up to maximum 5 lakhs. Okay, remember the penalties, guys. This can be asked in objective questions. Okay, 50,000 or remuneration, whichever is less, or 5 lakhs maximum. This is resignation of auditor. Now coming to the most important section, section 141, qualifications and disqualifications of auditor. Who can be appointed as auditor? A person who is a CA, chartered accountant, okay, having certificate of practice, can be appointed as auditor. A firm where majority of partners are qualified for appointment. A firm can be having 10 people, 10 partners. Of them, the majority should be qualified for appointment. That means the majority should be chartered accountants. Okay, then only that firm can be appointed as auditor. Firm includes LLP. Disqualifications, very important. 141 subsection 3. Disqualifications means the following persons cannot be appointed as auditors. A body corporate other than LLP. Body corporate means a company, okay. Other than LLP, any body corporate cannot be appointed as auditor. An officer or employee of the company. Company means here the client, okay. We are seeing from the point of view of client. Okay. The client's officer or employee cannot be appointed as auditor. Officer means director, manager, KMP. Okay. Partner or employee of these persons. If the officer or employee has some partner or again employees, that person also cannot be appointed. A person who or his relative holding any security or interest in the company, subsidiary, holding, or associate or subsidiary of holding. In these companies, if the person or his relative is holding security or interest, this can be remembered by the mnemonic CASHES, CASHS, company, associate, subsidiary, holding, subsidiary of holding. However, relative can hold for amount up to 1 lakh. This 1 lakh is allowed only in the company, but not this others, ASHS, ashes. Okay, in this the relative cannot hold. Only in the company he can hold. This is like a a loophole. While framing the law, this has not been introduced. So this can be asked in the exam. This 1 lakh allowed for relative only in the company, but not in associate holding or subsidiary holding. Okay, that is very important. If he is indebted greater than 5 lakhs, he is not allowed. Indebted means the person as relative is being holding debt up to 5 lakhs is allowed, but more than 5 lakhs he cannot be appointed as auditor. If he has given a guarantee of greater than 1 lakh, then also not allowed. Business relationship, directly or indirectly. The person should not have a business relationship, directly or indirectly. With what? Same again, CASHES. Plus, here one thing is added extra. Yes, subsidiary of associate. This is the only where subsidiary of associate is added. So this is very important to remember. Next, a person whose relative is a director is in employment of the company as a KMP or director. A person who is in full-time employment somewhere else. He's already working full-time somewhere else, so he cannot be appointed as auditor now. Very simple. If he is holding greater than 20 audits, see what is the limit of audits? 20 for a person. A chartered accountant cannot take how many audits he wants. Okay, there is a limit of 20 audits. This 20 audits in the 20 companies, small, dormant, OPC, branch audits, and private company where the paid up capital is less than 100 crores. These companies are not counted. So these companies do not fall in the limit of 20. Remember these companies, guys. Okay. He is convicted by a court for fraud, and 10 years has not elapsed from such conviction. Then also he is not eligible. Directly or indirectly, Section 144 services are provided. 144 deals with some services which are not to be provided by the auditor. If he is providing any such services, he is not eligible for appointment as auditor. This 20 audits is for statutory audits. For tax audits, the limit is 60. That is section 141. 140 deals with removal and resignation. 141 deals with qualification and disqualifications. 142 remuneration of auditors. First auditor, the remuneration is fixed by the board because members are electing the first auditor. So they will obviously fix the remuneration also. However, for the subsequent auditors, it is fixed in general meeting because members are acting here. Sorry, the first auditor is appointed by board. So board will be fixing the remuneration. Subsequent in general meeting by the members. Now we will go a little fast from here, okay? Section 143, powers and duties of auditors. What is the powers available with the auditor? 143 subsection 1, powers. Right to access the books of accounts and every books of the company, including subsidiary, associates, and branch. Okay. See, for giving a report, the auditor should have sufficient appropriate audit evidence. To gather such evidence, he has to be given access to various books. Books includes books of accounts, minutes, everything. Okay, copies of extracts and every papers in the company. He should be given access. That is his power. Right to obtain information explanation from officers. He can ask from the officers any information and explanation. The officers are bound to disclose. That is the power of auditor. Right to receive notices and to attend general meetings. Auditor's power is to receive notices and to attend general meetings. It is also the auditor's duty to attend general meetings. Because the logic is the general meetings, the communication is going on between the company, board of directors, and the members. So the auditor should be present there, okay, to know what is going on and to communicate with the members if needed. Right to report to members on accounts examined by him. He has a right to report to members. The company cannot stop from reporting. Right to lien. See, work is performed by the auditor on the books of accounts of the company. Right to lien is nothing but, take an example. If you have given a cloth to tailor for stitching, you have to pay some amount. Suppose you are not paying the amount, the tailor will not deliver your cloth to you. What he will say? The cloth may belong to you, but he will say that I have performed some work on this cloth, so unless you pay me the money, I will not give you the product. In the same way, right to lien is nothing but the auditor has performed some procedures on the books of accounts. If the client refuses to pay the money, the auditor can hold the books of accounts of the company on which he has done the work. But practically it is not possible because as per Companies Act, the books of accounts should be kept in the registered office of the company. Okay, you should go there and audit, but you cannot bring them to your home, right? So this is not practically possible. There is a object question. Does the auditor have right to lien on working papers of the auditor? No, because working papers are the property of the auditor. So the right to lien does not exist here, okay? Because it is your thing. How can right to lien exist on your thing? Okay, it exists on some other person's things. This is the powers of auditor. 143.1 duties of auditor to inquire into specified matters. In some matters, it is your duty to inquire. What are those matters? Those are very important matters. Loans and advances made on the basis of security. Transactions represented merely by book entries. Sale of investments. Loans and advances shown as deposits. Personal expenses charged to revenue. Shares shown as allotted for cash. These matters, the auditor has a duty to inquire. Next one. 143.2 auditors report to members on accounts. Okay, nothing. 142 remuneration powers. Okay, I completed this, right? 143.3 report on assertions in auditor's report. The auditor should include some report and assertions in his report. That information explanations are obtained, proper books of accounts are maintained, any branch office audited by any other auditor, he should report that. Balance sheet pay and learn agreement with books of accounts and returns, complying with accounting standards, his observations and comments, adequate control system is in place, information controls, and operating effectiveness. Okay, other matters, these are all to be reported on assertions in auditor report. 143.4 duty to state the reasons for qualifications. It is his duty. If you are qualifying your report, then you will include a paragraph called basis for qualification. If you remember, there you will disclose the reasons for such qualification. That is your duty. 143.567 deals with powers and rights of C&AG. I already told you C&AG comes into picture only for government company. Government company definition is dealt in section 2 subsection 45. Government company, company owned by, controlled by central government or state governments. Okay. Copy of audit report to be given to C&AG. 143.6 supplementary audit can be conducted by C&AG. Supplementary audit means additional audit. If the C&AG is not satisfied with your report, then they can call for a supplementary audit. They require information additional in financial statements. They can ask for additional information. Comment upon or supplement audit report. They can comment upon the report or supplement the audit report. This report is also given to everyone who are entitled to copies of financial statements. The first persons who are eligible to receive the copies of financial statements will also be given the supplementary report. As per 143.7, a test audit can also be conducted by C&AG for a government company. 143.8 branch audit. A company may be having many branches. Okay, the same auditor, the principal auditor, can also go and audit, or some other auditor can also be doing the work for a branch. If the branch is in India, it can be done by company auditor or other person qualified and appointed as per 139. He himself can go, or some other person who is qualified can also audit the branch. If the branch is outside India, then the auditor himself or any person qualified in accordance with laws of that country. Suppose the branch is in US, United States. For them, the laws may be different. So, as per US laws, that auditor can audit the branch of the company. Branch auditor should submit the report on the accounts to the auditor of the company. Because you are the main auditor, that is the branch. He should submit the report on the branch to the main auditor so that he can form an opinion. 143.9 and 10. Auditor to comply with auditing standards. What are auditing standards? Standards are recommended by ICAI. Our ICAI institute will recommend some standards in consultation with NFRA, National Financial Reporting Authority. Okay, then they will be prescribed by central government. Then it will be known as auditing standards. Till something is notified, standards issued by ICAI will be known as auditing standards. The auditor is bound to comply with the auditing standards. It is dealt in section 143 subsection 9 and 10. Next one, 143.11, audit report to include a statement on prescribed matters. CARO. We will see what is CARO also. Audit report should include a statement on prescribed matters separately. 143.12. This is very, very important, guys. Reporting of frauds to central government. See, while you're auditing the company, you may come across some frauds. So it is your duty to inform that to central government. Now, how should you do? How to inform? We will see here. If the auditor has sufficient reason to believe that an offence involving fraud is being or has been committed against the company. See, it is very important. Is being, that is, it is present tense. If something is being performed or has been committed in the past, which already happened, by officers or employees of the company, then he should report to central government. The words given are sufficient reason to believe. See, even if you don't know actually 100% also, but you have sufficient reason to believe, then you can report to central government. Fraud. Here the monetary amount is set as 1 crore. This is greater than 1 crore. This is less than 1 crore. If the amount is greater than or equal to 1 crore, individual amount, that means one person, if any one person, he has done fraud greater than 1 crore, then he should report to central government. Within 2 days of knowledge of fraud, see, only 2 days is given to you. Within 2 days, he should report to central government. Sorry, within 2 days, he should report to board or audit committee. If the company has a audit committee, you should report to audit committee. Otherwise, you should report to board of directors. And seek reply within 45 days. You should give them time of 45 days. Within 45 days, I want reply. If they have given you reply, then forward that reply plus report and observations and comments, everything within 15 days to central government. If 1 crore or above fraud is involved, within 2 days report to board or audit committee and ask for reply within 45 days. If reply is received within 15 days, you include all of these reports and observations and comments and submit to central government. If within 45 days no reply is received, then you should forward your report and note containing details of no reply to central government. You should include all the notes that I have given them. I have given board of directors, but I did not receive any reply, etc., etc. You should write everything and forward it to central government. This is for amounts greater than 1 crore or equal to 1 crore. For less than 1 crore, there is no need to report to central government. Within 2 days of knowledge of fraud, you should report to board or audit committee as said above. So your work is done here. What to include? Nature of fraud, approximate amount involved, parties involved. You should write this to board. In the board's report, the company is to include nature of fraud, approximate amount involved, parties involved, and remedial actions taken. What the company has done against that fraud, against that employee or officer who has done fraud. The remedial actions to be taken by the company. These things are to be included in board's report. So this is 143.12, reporting of frauds to central government. This is very, very important, guys. See, this question is important because it is directly linked to SA 240 frauds. They, you see how to identify a fraud, what to do, everything. Here, you are reporting that fraud to central government. One 43.13. No liability of auditor if reported to central government in good faith. If you are reporting in good faith, but later it has come to know that no fraud actually happened, then you are not liable because you have done in good faith. Section 143.14. Mutatis mutandis to cost accountant secretarial auditor. This same section, reporting to central government, is equally applicable to cost accountant and secretarial auditor also. Now, 143.15. Non-compliance. If this is not complied by the auditor, then the fine will be minimum 1 lakh, maximum 25 lakhs. This is the completion of section 143. Now, section 144. Auditor not to render certain services. These specified services are known as other services. These services, the auditor directly or indirectly shall not provide any of the other services to the company or its holding or subsidiary company. What are other services? Here it is given: accounting, bookkeeping, internal audit, designing implementation of information system, actuarial services, investment advisory services, investment banking services, outsourced financial services, management services, other services as prescribed. These all are known as other services. Think generally. We know what are the threats. Okay, familiarity threats, advocacy threats. If this is performed by the auditor, and again you are auditing the company, independence is affected. This will be advocacy threat also. You are reviewing your own work, so the auditor should not render services. What happens if he tenders? He should vacate the office. He will be disqualified as an auditor. Services other than the above, if some services are to be provided other than this, they should be approved by the board or audit committee. Then only you can provide the services. Okay, this is section 144. Section 145. Signing of audit reports. Who should sign the audit report? If it is individual, only the auditor can sign. If it is a firm, only the partners who are chartered accountants can sign the audit report. Section 146. Auditors to attend AGM. It is the auditor's duty to attend the AGM. If you remember, it is the auditor's right to receive the notice of AGM. Here in 146, it is the auditor's duty to attend the AGM. That means it is compulsory to attend. Auditors also has the right to be heard at general meeting. In general meeting, the auditor has a right to be heard. That means he should be given a right to talk to members, to communicate to members. Only if the business is concerned with him. That means if something is related to his work or his field, then only he should be given a right. Not everywhere you can give he should be given a right. Only in matters concerning to auditor, he should be given a right to be heard at general meeting. Duty to attend unless exempted by the company. So can the company exempt the auditor from attending general meeting? Yes, the company if says he need not attend. But if it is not exempted, it is the duty to attend general meeting. How to attend? By himself or by authorized representative. The auditor is representing someone else to go to the meeting, to attend the meeting behalf of himself. However, that other person should also be equally eligible to become an auditor. Then only he can be appointed as authorized representative. Next one, Section 147, punishment for contravention. Very, very important. First, section 147 1 deals with contravention by company and officer. If you are contravening any of the sections, if the company is contravening, the minimum amount is 25,000, maximum 5 lakhs. If the officer in default, minimum is 10,000 to maximum 1 lakh or imprisonment or both. Okay. Now, section 147 2 deals with auditor. Auditor has contravened this section. Here it is divided into two types. Normal, if he has done some fault but not intentionally. Okay, something has happened because of some mistake but not intentionally. He is not deceiving willfully. Then the minimum amount is 25,000 to maximum 5 lakhs or 4 times remuneration, whichever is less. If he has done something knowingly or willfully to deceive, deceive means cheating, he is cheating, then the limits are huge, 50,000 to 25 lakhs or 8 times of remuneration, whichever is less. He should also refund the remuneration. The remuneration, if he has taken, he should refund that, and he should pay the damages to members, creditors, or authorities, etc. This is section 147, very, very important. Next one is 148, cost audit. Cost audit to be done by cost accountant. As statutory audit is be done by chartered accountant, cost audit is to be done by cost accountant. Rule 3 deals with applicability of maintenance of cost records. Some companies, it is compulsory to maintain cost records. What are those companies? If turnover from product plus services 35 crores or more during immediately preceding financial year. If your turnover is 35 crores, then cost records is mandatory to maintain, including foreign company, excluding MSME, regulated or non-regulated sectors. Okay, for all these companies, if the turnover from product or services greater than 35 crores in the immediately preceding financial year, then cost records are to be compulsorily maintained by the company. Rule 4 deals with applicability of cost audit. Cost records is separate, cost audit is separate. Here the companies are divided into two sectors, regulated sector and non-regulated sectors. Regulated sectors is telecom, electricity companies, pharma companies, fertilizer companies, sugar companies. So these are highly regulated by the government. For regulated sector, if the gross turnover is greater than or equal to 50 crores or turnover of individual products or services is greater than or equal to 25 crores, then cost audit is compulsory for these companies which are regulated. For non-regulated, the limits are 100 crores and 35 crores. Then cost audit is applicable for the companies. However, there are some exceptions. If the revenue from exports is greater than 75% of total revenue, suppose your total revenue is 200 crores. If the revenue from export is greater than 150 crores, that is 75%, then you need not apply cost audit. You are not eligible for cost audit. Or you are operating from special economic zone, then also cost audit is not applicable for you. That means these are mainly export oriented industries who are mainly concentrating on exports. Then the cost audit is not applicable for them. Maintenance of cost records as per CRA 1. Cost records to be maintained as per CRA 1. Rule 6 deals with appointment of cost auditor. Who can be appointed as a cost auditor? Cost accountant. Within 180 days of commencement of financial year. Financial year starts at April 1st. Within 180 days from April 1st, that is commencement of financial year, cost auditor is to be appointed. Notice to central government within 30 days of board meeting in CRA 2. After appointing, within 30 days, you have to give to central government within 30 days in CRA 2. This auditor, cost auditor, continue till the expiry of 180 days from the closure of financial statements. Okay, after financial year ended, from 180 days from there, he can hold the office, or date of submission of cost audit report as per CRA 3, whichever is earlier. See, 180 days, if he submits his cost audit report before 180 days also, till that date, he can hold the office, whichever is earlier. 143.12, reporting of fraud to central government is also equally applicable to cost auditor. Casual vacancy. Casual vacancy means death, resignation. Okay, that can be filled by board in CRA 2. Same CRA 2 to be given to central government within 30 days. CRA 2 here and here it is same within 30 days to central government after appointment. Now, the cost auditor will give the report to company in CRA 3. The company will give report to central government in CRA 4 within 30 days. So, if you see clearly, there are 4 forms: CRA 1, 2, 3, 4. CRA 1 is for maintenance of cost records. 2 comes 2 times. Notice to central government of appointment of auditor. The same comes here also if casual vacancy is filled by auditor. CRA 3 is for submission of cost audit report by auditor to company. CRA 4 is for cost audit report from company to central government. So by this we complete the company audit. Section 139 we have started. We have ended in section 148. Now next we will deal with CARO 2016. CARO stands for Company Accounts Audit Report. Just a minute. CARO stands for Company Auditors Report Order. For November exams 2020, CARO 2016 is applicable. However, for the next attempts, CARO 2020 is applicable. Here we are discussing CARO 2016. Applicability. It is applicable to every company, including a foreign company, except for these companies, CARO is not applicable. What are those companies? Banking company, insurance company, OPC, one-person company, Section 8 company, small company, private limited company, which is not a subsidiary or holding of public company, having paid up share capital not more than 1 crore plus reserves in surplus, borrowings not more than 1 crore, total revenue not more than 10 crores. This is all combined condition. You can see end is given in the definition. If all of this is satisfied, CARO need not be applicable. However, if any of the one limits is crossed, then CARO is applicable. You can remember this by BIOS SP. Banking, insurance, OPC, Section 8, small company, and private limited company with the limits 1 crore, 1 crore, 10 crores. The important part is end. This is a combined condition. Where the paid up share capital means here you have seen paid up share capital plus reserves and surplus not more than 1 crore. What is paid up share capital? It includes equity share capital plus preference share capital. From that, reduce the calls unpaid. reduce the share application money received. That becomes the paid up share capital. Reserves and surplus means capital, capital reserves plus revenue reserves plus revaluation reserves plus debit balance of P&L account. All these form part of reserves and surplus. Borrowings means here borrowings. Both long-term and short-term borrowings are included here. Next, total revenue. Revenue means total revenue, including other sources and discontinued operations. Right? CARO not applicable to CFS, consolidated financial statements. For that, CARO is not applicable. Okay, this is CARO applicability. Here I have tried to cover whole CARO in one page. Okay, you can read the parts. I'll tell here. Okay, there are total 16 points in the CARO. I divided into 3 parts. The major thing in CARO is to remember the clause numbers. Here we can go by example of some story so that you can remember easily. 1 to 8 clauses in this one, 9, 10, 11 here, 12 to 16 here. So total 16 clauses. Fill your bank account with CC. CC means cash credit. Fill your bank account with CC. Use it to pay statutory dues and make no default in repayment of loans and borrowings. I have marked in red color. These things are useful to form your answer. CARO is dealt in clause 3, 1, 3 subsection 1. You can write in Roman numbers. Okay, first one is F. F for fixed assets. I for inventory. Okay, this is the procedure. I will tell in summary wise. Okay, F for fixed assets. Okay, the auditor should check the condition of fixed assets. Okay, if the proper records are being maintained, check the condition in the quantitative records, how the physical verification is being conducted, if it is conducted in reasonable intervals of time, if there are any material discrepancies, how are they being dealt with. Okay, if there are title deeds, whether they are in the name of the company or not, that is all dealt in fixed assets 3.1. Now 3.2, I for inventory, fill. I for inventory. Inventory also similar to fixed assets. It deals with physical verification, material discrepancies. Okay. Third one, L. L stands for loans given by the company. The company has given loans. So you have to take all the details of regarding loans of the company. You have to check whether they are not prejudicial to the interest of the company. You have to make a schedule of repayments. If there are any repayments pending, you should check them if there are proper actions taken or not. Okay, if there are more than 90 days, you have to check, verify them, etc, etc. You can read the points in your book, guys. Okay, it is very self-explanatory. I'm helping you to remember to write the answer easily. Fourth one is L. Loan to directors and investment by the company. If the company has given any loan to directors, points regarding that, and investment by the company, whether the investment is in the limits or not, you have to check that also. Fifth one, 4 you have completed in fill. CC, 2 C's. First C is for compliance of section 73 to 76. That is deposits. If the company has received any deposits, whether it is in compliance with the RBI regulations or not. Because deposits not every company can accept. If it is accepting, you should satisfy RBI guidelines. Second C stands for cost records under section 148. We have studied cost records, right? If any cost records is applicable to the company, if the company is maintaining cost records, okay, you should just make a review of cost records if it is maintaining or not. That's it. Next one, here you can also see in every point you can obtain management representation. You can obtain a letter from the management. You can include that point in every clause. Statutory dues, this is very important. S stands for statutory dues. That means any TDS amounts, GST amounts, okay, whether any statutory amounts, PF amounts are pending, if they are being paid in proper time, if regular payments are being made, no defaults are being made, if there is any default or if there is any pending case or litigation against such, all the details regarding that are to be mentioned in the report. Next one, loans and borrowings. Default in repayment of loans and borrowings. You have taken some loans and borrowings, you are making default, you are not paying them on time. Then all the details regarding such non-payment, okay, are to be mentioned here. These are the first 8 points. Once again, fill your bank account with CC, use it to pay statutory dues, and make no default in repayment of loans and borrowings. Next, 9, 10, 11. Now, you issue an IPO without any fraud and pay managerial remuneration on time. Very simple. Issue IPO without any fault, without any fraud, pay management remuneration on time. 3 sub 9, clause 3, 9. IPO. IPO means initial public offer. When you are issuing IPO, you have to check the prospectus. The amounts received, whether you are investing in the same things that you have promised or not. Okay, how the amounts received are being made in a separate bank account or not. If you are refunding any amount, all the details regarding that. This is in IPO. Next is fraud. Whenever you see the word fraud, you have to get two words in your mind. First one is section 240, sorry, SA 240, and section 143 subsection 12. Right, if there is any fraud committed by the company, if it is reported properly or not, you take a management representation from the company that all the frauds, all the instances of fraud are being reported to the auditor or not. Okay, check the minutes of the company, have communication with the employees and officers of the company, etc., etc. That is relating to fraud. Next is managerial remuneration. If you have studied law, there is section 197 of Companies Act and schedule 5, where the total managerial remuneration is fixed at 11% of the net profits. Okay, individual limits 3%, 5%, 11% totally, they are mentioned there. If the total remuneration is being paid properly in accordance with Companies Act or not, that is dealt here. So the last point, last 5 points, 12 to 16. You marry a girl named Nidhi. In the marriage, you invite related parties, give them preference, accept only non-cash gifts. If they give cash, tell to RBI. Very simple, okay? You marry Nidhi, invite related parties, give preference to them, accept only non-cash gifts. If you receive cash, tell to RBI. Now, 311 is for Nidhi company. What is Nidhi company? Nidhi company is a company created to promote the culture of savings. It is nothing but a group of people who are accumulating the money, who are saving the money and accumulating them. Someone wants to use the money, they can withdraw and use the money. Okay. So all the regulations regarding Nidhi Companies Act, Nidhi Companies rules are being followed or not, you have to check here. And next one is related party transactions. Who are related parties? What are the transactions? If the companies have disclosed them or not, take a representation from management. Okay. Next one, preferential allotment or private placement. Preferential allotment means you are issuing shares to a selected group of people, some private group of people. That is known as private placement. If you are doing such thing, then all the regulations are being followed or not. How is the money being utilized? Okay, if it is kept in separate bank account or not. If you are refunding any money, details regarding that, everything should be mentioned here. Next, non-cash. Non-cash transactions. If you are entering into non-cash transactions with directors or other officers of the company, all the details regarding such non-cash transactions and the reasons thereof. Take management letter from the management wherever applicable. RBI. If your company is registered under 45 IA of RBI Act, that is NBFC company. For NBFC companies, you should take approval. You should register under RBI Act. if it is registered or not, all approvals are available or not, you should be checking that. All these things should be reported in CARO, Company Auditors Report Order 2016. This should be along with the audit report. You need not mention every point if it is following. Okay, only if the company is defaulting, you can include such point. Okay, for remembering these numbers, you take the example of this small story. Fill your bank with CC, use it to pay statutory dues, and make no default repayment of loans and borrowings. Then issue an IPO without any fraud and pay managerial remuneration on time. Then marry Nidhi, invite related parties, give preference to them, accept only non-cash gift. If you receive cash, tell to RBI. This is the story. So by this final slide, we complete our company audit, all the sections, and CARO 2016. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for joining.